Today's video is sponsored by Brilliant. We'll hear more from them in a little while. It has often been said throughout history that the best artists are tortured souls, and that the best art comes from suffering. And Carlo Gesualdo certainly fits that mold like a glove. His music was hundreds of years ahead of his time, and is highly regarded even to this day for its forward thinking. He also murdered his wife and her lover, got away with it scot-free, and then locked himself in a castle in isolation for the final years of his life, where he suffered from enormous guilt and depression, and had his own servants beat him daily.
Coincidence? I think not!
Not much is known about Carlo's childhood, but from what we do know, it doesn't sound like a very happy one. He was born into a royal family in 1566 in southern Italy. His mother died when he was just 7, and he was sent to live with his uncle to pursue an ecclesiastical career. But then his brother died, and Carlo was named the new Prince of Venosa, which ended his church career path. After being named prince, he married his first cousin. Royalty always keeps it in the family. But another love of his young life, other than his cousin, was music. In his childhood, Carlo received training from several prominent teachers, and he showed a deep passion for music from a very young age. It was said that he would neglect all of his other subjects for his study of the harpsichord, the lute, and the guitar. Anyway, jumping back to the timeline. One can imagine that a marriage to your first cousin might come with some complications, and here was no different. In the year 1590, Carlo caught his wife and her lover together in bed, and things did not end well. He stormed in with a group of armed guards and made the term crime of passion sound like a lullaby. In fact, after the deed was done, there was a reporting of Carlo going back to the bodies a second time because he believed they weren't dead enough. And yes, he got away with it completely scot-free. I guess being royalty has its advantages. A few years after this incident, Carlo arranged for another marriage. Luckily, this time it wasn't to his cousin. It was to the niece of Duke Alfonso II, and they moved to Ferrara, which was the home of his wife's family's court. Ferrara was a hotbed for musicians and musical innovations at the time, and for roughly 2 to 3 years, Carlo had access to some of the finest musicians and composers in Italy. During his time there, he met Luzzaschi, who was one of the most forward-thinking composers in the genre of the madrigal. Luzzaschi had some very strong ideas about the connection between text and harmony, as well as chromaticism. And he was also proficient at the archicembalo, which was a microtonal keyboard instrument that solved many of the problems of mean tone temperament, which meant that chromaticism in different keys would be more accessible than they had previously been. Carlo took many of Luzzaschi's ideas to heart, and would eventually turn them all up to 11. Upon returning from Ferrara back to his own castle, he set up his own private musician's paradise. Because of his wealth, he was able to afford to hire live-in virtuoso musicians that could play his music at any time he wanted. He was able to print his own music, and unlike other composers at the time, he did not have to please anyone other than himself. He had no benefactor hanging over his head that would pull his funding if he wrote something they didn't like. And this allowed him to write and experiment more freely than just about anybody else. As time went on in his castle, Carlo began to isolate himself more and more, taking interest in nothing but music. His mental health declined tremendously, and he was torn by guilt and depression over what he did earlier in his life, and this was reflected in his music. Carlo wrote 6 books of madrigals throughout his life. The first few were normal for the time, and the music was quite comparable to others at the time, somebody like Palestrina. For example, here's the first madrigal from his first book. There's very little chromaticism, dissonances are well prepared, and voice leading principles are clearly a priority here. The text is even quite positive compared to what we're going to see later. And here's an example of Palestrina, considered the gold standard of Renaissance counterpoint. And many of the same principles are at work here. And now here is the first phrase of a madrigal from his 6th book. Hear the difference? This sounds completely alien compared to his earlier work, and to Palestrina. But why? There are many strange things here, to say the least. You could spend a lifetime studying this music, but let's just focus on a couple of the big things. Let's first start with the text. As Luzzaschi once said, since poetry is the first to be born, music reveres and honors her as her lady, so much so that music having become virtually a shadow of poetry. This to say, the music must express the words. These lyrics show the reflection of Carlo's mental state towards the end of his life. Throughout his 5th and 6th books, his lyrics are very dark and harrowing. So in order to get the feelings of these lyrics across, we need some elements in the music to make you feel uneasy. And that goes next to the harmony. Here are the chords of the first phrase of Moro Lasso. How would you make sense of this? Now, Renaissance harmony analysis isn't quite as straightforward as it is in the Common Practice period. A lot of it is based on the modal system, but with some tonal elements sprinkled in, as if tonality was trying to break through. But here, no matter if you take a tonal or modal approach, it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. It's still incredibly ambiguous and complex. What key would you say we are in? Or what mode are we working off? Go ahead and pause the video, give it a try. My best guess is A minor, because of that cadence that happens in measure 6. Although even that is shaky, but we'll save cadences as a topic for another day. But if we're going to analyze an A minor, how do we categorize that first chord, C sharp major? Well, I want you to listen to something else really quick. This is the beginning of Schubert's Mass in E flat Sanctus movement, and that progression should sound familiar. When speaking about Schubert's harmony, who himself was quite a radical with it, we might describe those first 2 harmonies as a doubly chromatic median, or a hexatonic pole, which is a chord that is a third apart but has no common tones. The difference is, of course, is that Schubert's Mass was written in 1828, that was stretching an already well-established tonal system, and Moro Lasso was written in 1611, while tonality was still in its infancy. Were these 2 composers thinking the same way when they wrote this? Probably not, but they came to the same conclusion. Carlo must have had a time machine. And if you want to keep your brain sharp to keep up with Carlo Gesualdo's complex harmony, I'd recommend today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is an online learning platform that helps you become a better thinker and problem solver, and it does this through thousands of practical interactive lessons in math, science, programming, data analysis, and AI that let you experiment with the concepts it's teaching. And for someone like me, being hands-on allows me to learn so much faster than just someone talking at me. Brilliant has something here for everyone, but I've been spending a lot of time in the science section of courses. Brilliant's science courses help you develop your scientific intuition through visual, interactive problem solving that gets you hands-on with key concepts. In the scientific thinking course, I got to play pool while learning about the transfer of momentum during collisions and chain reactions. Brilliant will help you reach serious learning goals by starting at the ground floor with everything it teaches, helping you master the fundamentals and then levels you up to increasingly challenging problems. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/Jake Thurston or scan the QR code on the screen. Or you can click the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. Thanks to Brilliant for the sponsor, and now back to the video. So the first 2 chords of Moro Lasso are a double chromatic median, or a hexatonic pole, but then we get another strange chord, B major, which we could think of as a secondary dominant in A minor, which should go to E, but instead goes to G. Maybe this is an idea of a deceptive cadence? But then we get another chromatic mediant move to E major from G, 2 chords a third apart that share one common tone, and then we finally get back to A minor. It's hard to say exactly what Carlo was thinking when he was using this kind of harmony. I would have loved to hear an explanation, but as far as I know, none exists. Usually when chromaticism was used in madrigals, it was for a change in color, or for an expressive reason, but never to this extreme. Maybe these chromaticisms were just Carlo expressing the extreme emotions of the text and his own situation with wild harmony. But it's highly unlikely that I'm looking at this harmony the same way he would have. But I would have loved to be a fly on the wall when he was writing this. Another very strange for the time aspect to his music was his use of dissonance. Dissonances were used plenty in the Renaissance, but they were all handled with care. Dissonances had to be set up in a particular way and resolved in a particular way. Just look at this 4th species counterpoint example. all of those suspensions have to be resolved just right, or the theorists at the time would call it careless or just plain wrong. But take a look at the opening of this madrigal. Carlo just doesn't care. If dissonance expresses the text, dissonance there will be. The opening text of this translates to, "I've already cried so much with sorrow," and Carlo decides to emancipate a little bit of dissonance. Here in the second measure we have two dissonances at once, a major second and a minor seventh above the root C. They are both resolved, but to have two at once is unusual. We then hang out on a perfect fourth, which was considered a dissonance at the time, and instead of it being resolved to a third, it's moved chromatically upward to a tritone, which in my opinion sounds great, but definitely would have been looked down upon at the time. But even though his music was radical and wild for the time period, after his death it was highly regarded. Many of the extreme elements in his music would not commonly be seen again until the 19th and 20th centuries, with composers such as Schubert and Stravinsky, who was a huge fan, as you might imagine. Stravinsky reworked several of Carlo's madrigals into a piece called Monumento pro Gesualdo. In the beginning of the video, I said that art comes from suffering and that the best artists are tortured souls. Not gonna lie, that is not something that I generally agree with. I think the best art comes from those who consistently improve their craft, and in general, celebrating people that do horrible things to inspire their art is not a good thing, at least in my opinion. But in this case, it's hard to make my argument. I think it is clear from the shift in his writing and style that this man was haunted by what he had done, and that was the reason he pushed his music to such extremes for the time period. And what he produced was truly ahead of his time. The music is haunting and revolutionary. But there is much more to say about Gesualdo, and I've barely scratched the surface here, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe and check out my Patreon. Thanks!